Chapter 6 Religion, Key Issue 4. Content Objective. Explain why territorial conflicts arise with religious disputes. ICANN statements. 1. Describe reasons for religious conflicts arising from government policies. 2. Summarize reasons for conflicts between religions. 3. Analyze reasons for religious conflicts in the Middle East. 4. Describe differences in geographical frameworks in the Middle East. Just getting started. Remember, religion always represents and preserves the most traditional values of a population, so it can be very sensitive. How might the quote reflect the tension between local diversity and globalization? Think about that. All right, so let's talk about government and religion. We look at religious groups. Some elements of cultural diversity cause conflict, such as religious fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is the literal interpretation to usually the holy text or scripture to basic principles of that religion. This tends to be very synonymous with secular religions, where the religious beliefs heavily influence political decisions, and the ability to move to progressive modernity is rejected. Taliban would be a religious fundamentalist group. They despise Western values. So when they oppose or despise Western values, we can see that they ban leisure activities like soccer, flying kites, flogging, or soccer, flying kites, wearing your hair long, and then punitive punishment is enforced. As extreme as executions, or less extreme with public floggings or beatings. We can look at Hinduism and how it creates a dispute with social equality. Hinduism has been strongly challenged to dismantle the caste system, but the caste system has been a part of it throughout history. The caste system, since the independence of 1947, has been on the decline, but it's still seen in rural parts where it's enforced during marriage with the dowry. But we can see women demonstrating for social change, for Dalit rights. We look at the communist government versus religion, and we can see the Bolshevik revolution that took place in 1917. This eliminated the official church connection to the Russian Orthodox. The communists enforced no religion. When communism ends in the early 1990s, there will be a revival of religions in Eastern Europe. Countries in Central Asia, such as Islam, will be revived in many of the former republics of the Soviet Union. Quickly think of what the former republics are. We can see that this is going to impose conflict with types of governments and religious beliefs, because now you have competing former Soviet Union that were atheists with new Islamic traditions, and then before that, Eastern Orthodox. So you have three competing religions in these former republics of the Soviet Union. Communist governments in Southeast Asia discouraged religious activity. Some of them some of the structures were eliminated, and some of the structures still remain, like Angkor Wat complex in Cambodia. But to rebuild these, after communism leaves, to rebuild these structures that were desecrated or decayed, it's hard for many to rebuild. The exception would be Angkor Wat. Here's a picture of Angkor Wat. in Cambodia. We can see, we talked about Ireland earlier with the distribution of Catholics and Protestants in the city of Belfast, but the Irish, this country of Ireland has been in conflict with the British colonization. When the United Kingdom, when they joined the United Kingdom, Ireland became independent in 1937. When we look at Ireland today, or in 2001, the distribution was 46% Protestant, 40% Roman Catholic. Roman Catholics were victimized by discrimination practices found in government and jobs and schooling. Belfast is the capital city that's highly segregated, as we already learned. Bloody Sunday occurred in 1968, and it was bloodshed by both Protestants and Catholics. Here shows the distribution. When we look at, it says 1911, long a colony of England, Ireland became a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. 37, it became independent. The Republic of Ireland today is 87% Roman Catholic, whereas in the north it's mostly Protestant, and in the north it's a part of the United Kingdom. It's a part of a multinational state of the United Kingdom, which encompasses Northern Ireland and Wales and Scotland and England. And then the Republic of Ireland has been sovereign since 1937. All right, this is just a review of Belfast and the distribution of both Protestants and Catholics in the major city of Belfast. Look at one of the oldest religious disputes in the world. It's between Jews, Christians, and Muslims over the Promised Land, or the Holy Land. It goes back to the story of Abraham. In the story of Abraham, in both scriptures of the Torah and the Quran, they both believe that they have rights to the Promised Land. So it's deeply embedded in religious beliefs. Muslim armies conquered. Well, when we know the diffusion of Muslim warrior conquest, it's spread through the Promised Land, and also known as Palestine, by Muslims. They conquered the Promised Land in 600 AD, and Jerusalem, as a reminder, it's the third holy city because the Dome of the Rock. Christianity believe it's a sacred place because Bethlehem was the birthplace of Jesus Christ, and also there's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which represents Jesus' life and his resurrection. And then it's holy for Jews because that's the site of the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall, the most holy site of the Jewish faith. They trace back to Abraham, so they're Abrahamic religions. They've tried over history to recapture the Holy Land through military campaigns by Muslims, through military campaigns by the Christian Crusades. In modern day, when we look in 1947, it's the only state that has been created by the United Nations. And they agreed to the partition plan in 1947, but the Muslims rejected it. So in 1948, Israel became an official sovereign state, and within days, the Six-Day War ensued. And the Six-Day War, Israel's neighbors amassed 250,000 troops along the border and blocked Israel's ships using international waterways to retaliate. Israel launched a surprise attack, destroying the coalition air forces. Israel captured the territory. So when we look at the Six-Day War of 48, and then the War of 1948, when they declared independence, the Arabs attacked immediately. Then they signed an armistice in 49. Then in 56, there was the Suez Canal dispute. the Suez Canal, Egypt retained the control of the Suez Canal and the Sinai Peninsula. And then in 67, the Six-Day War, which we see right here on the right, this is where Israel was able to defeat the Arab attacks. And with that, they gained from Syria the Golan Heights, they gained from Egypt the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula. And from Jordan, they gained the old city of Jerusalem and the West Bank, which is occupied territory now of Palestinians. So they amassed a large state after the War of 67. Then in 73, it will be known as the Yom Kippur War. Palestinians emerged with the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that opposed Israel's occupation of Palestine. They led a surprise attack on Israel, and it ended without much change of boundaries. But it showed that Israel was a formidable military in the Middle East. And then after the Yom Kippur War, the Egypt President Anwar Sadat and Prime Minister Menachem Begin signed a peace treaty, well, not right after the war, 6 years after, in the Treaty of the Camp David Accords in 1973, where Egypt recognized, for the first Arab country, recognizing Israel as a sovereign country. Israel's building a security fence on the boundary with the West Bank. Here we have the quartered city of the international city of Jerusalem. And what you can see with the quartering of the city, the Western Wall is right near, the holy site of Judaism is right near the quadrant of Muslims. The Church of Holy Sepulchre, which is the holy place of Christians, is real close to the Muslim quarters. Then you have mosque in the Christian quarters, and you have Catholic Church and you have a church in the Muslim quarter. Here shows you how close the Western Wall is to Dome of the Rock. So it shows you how close those holy sites are to the quartering of Israel or of Jerusalem. There are 5 groups that comprise Palestinians. They're mostly Arab, but not all Arab ethnicity. People living in the territory before the expansion of Israel in 67, in the Six-Day War of 67. Some, as I mentioned, are Arabs. Some fled Israel after the War of 1948. And most identify as Palestinians. So they can comprise different ethnic groups and refugees. Some Palestinians are willing to recognize Israel as a Jewish majority in exchange for territory. Some Israelis are willing to return most of the territory and recognize Palestinian as an independent sovereign country. Some Palestinians, though, still do not recognize the right of Israel to exist. And some Israelis are willing to turn over any territory to the Palestinians. So you have a conflict that has deep historical roots. It has had many confrontations that have led to fatalities, and still we have a population that is very much divided of how they see the future of Israel and Palestine. But keep in mind, currently Palestinians are in occupied territories of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. All right, here's the West Bank, and we can see there are Israeli settlements that are encroaching on the West Bank, but this is occupied territory that has the largest concentration of Palestinians in the state of Israel. All right, and that will conclude Chapter 6 notes. Make sure, again, you go back and you review your notes, your reading guides, and the quizzes, and your test review.